The last breath of Sarah Thompson. At 6:42 a.m., a jogger taking his routine trail through the dense forest behind the Wilson residence came to a sudden halt. Something unnatural lay beneath the thick foliage, a patch of earth where the leaves had been hastily disturbed. He took a step closer, his breath catching as his eyes fell on the pale, lifeless hand, its fingers curled in an eerie, frozen grasp. She thought exposing the truth would set her free. Instead, it sealed her death. The crisp morning air of September 15, 2018, carried a chilling silence over the small Connecticut suburb of Millbrook. The town, usually alive with the sounds of birds and the rustling of leaves, stood still, almost as if the air itself recoiled from the horror hidden within the woods. A crime of pure, calculated rage had unfolded in the very woods where Sarah once wandered freely, capturing nature through her lens. Now, her own story had been forced into silence, but the evidence left behind screamed for justice. There were bruises on her arms, the markings of a struggle, a desperate attempt to fight back against her killer. Her clothes were torn and disheveled, dirt smeared across her pale skin, but something was missing. Her camera, the object she never left home without, was nowhere to be found. The body of Sarah Thompson, 17 years old, was barely concealed beneath a tangle of leaves and broken twigs, as though someone had tried but failed to hide their crime. Her once bright blue eyes stared into the abyss, her mouth slightly open, as if the last breath of life had been stolen too soon. Her throat was torn apart in a jagged slash, the wound deep, brutal, merciless. Blood, now dried to a dark, rusted hue, stained her neck and seeped into the earth beneath her. The crime was not just a murder, it was a butchery. The town of Millbrook, a place where doors were always left unlocked and neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles, was about to become the epicenter of a shocking, deeply sinister investigation. Before the world knew her as a tragic headline, Sarah Thompson was a girl full of dreams, laughter, and unshakable determination. Born on March 14, 2001 in Hartford, Connecticut, she grew up in the small, peaceful suburb of Millbrook. The life she never got to live. In school, she was a standout student, excelling in English and art. Her teachers described her as sharp-witted, observant, and fiercely independent. She wasn't the type to follow crowds or chase popularity. Sarah was different. From an early age, Sarah's mind worked like a camera lens, capturing details others overlooked. She found beauty in the simplest of things, the way light passed through tree branches, the quiet solitude of early mornings, the forgotten moments between conversations. Her passion for photography and journalism wasn't just a hobby, it was an obsession. Her best friend, Emily Chun, would later recall how Sarah had a knack for sensing when something was off. She could read people, understand unspoken emotions, and had a deep-rooted belief that truth should always be uncovered, no matter the cost. Sarah lived with her mother, Amanda Wilson, and stepfather, Robert Wilson, in a two-story colonial house at the edge of town. The family appeared comfortable, even privileged. Robert was a well-respected financial advisor who had built a strong reputation in Hartford. Amanda, a former school teacher, had settled into a life of quiet domesticity. But beneath this illusion of stability and wealth, something was deeply wrong. As Sarah grew older, her relationship with Amanda became strained. Her mother, once her closest confidant, had changed after marrying Robert. Sarah often felt like an outsider in her own home, watching as Amanda prioritized her new marriage over their bond. At first, Robert Wilson had been the ideal stepfather, charming, generous, a man who seemed to genuinely care for Sarah's future. But over the years that changed. Sarah, always perceptive, noticed the subtle shifts in his behavior. The late-night phone calls, the whispered conversations, the secrets he kept behind locked office doors. By the time she was 17, she had uncovered a truth she was never meant to know, a truth that would get her killed. In the months leading up to her murder, Sarah Thompson was not the same girl she had always been. The vibrant, outspoken teenager, known for her love of photography and sharp wit, had started to fade into silence. The secret that sealed her fate. Her once bubbly presence became withdrawn, distant. She no longer lingered after school to chat with friends, no longer spent hours in her bedroom editing photographs, carefully crafting the world as she saw it. Instead, she moved through her days with a quiet unease, her mind preoccupied with something too heavy to share. Her best friend, Emily Chun, would later recall the shift in Sarah's behavior. On September 10, 2018, just 5 days before her murder, Sarah wrote, "He thinks no one knows, but I do. I saw them. I saw everything." At first, these words seemed cryptic, just the ramblings of a teenager. But when investigators dug deeper, they uncovered the real reason Sarah Thompson was killed. She had discovered the affair. Sarah had always kept a small, leather-bound notebook where she jotted down thoughts, ideas for stories, and poetry. It was a habit she had started in childhood, a space where she could express herself freely. But in her final weeks, the pages held something far darker. She was paranoid, always looking over her shoulder, like she knew someone was watching her. At the time, no one understood why. Then there was the journal. Her stepfather, Robert Wilson, the man her mother trusted, had been hiding a secret relationship with her next-door neighbor, Elena Gonzalez, the wife of his closest friend, David Gonzalez. For over a year, Robert and Elena had met in hotel rooms, parked cars, and dark corners of town. Their affair was built on lies, stolen glances, and whispered promises. And Sarah, always curious, always chasing the truth, had put the pieces together. On the night of September 8th, 2018, she followed Robert. She had watched as he left the house under a flimsy excuse, claiming he had a late meeting. But Sarah had a gut feeling that wouldn't let her stay home. She trailed him to a secluded parking lot outside a small cafe on the edge of Hartford. Hidden behind a row of bushes, she watched in horrified silence as Robert met Elena Gonzalez under the dim glow of streetlights. The embrace, the intimacy, the lingering touch of hands that weren't supposed to meet. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for her camera. She lifted the lens, her breath shaky, and began taking photo after photo, capturing the undeniable truth. Sarah wasn't just a teenager with a camera. She was an aspiring journalist, a truth seeker, someone who believed in exposing lies, no matter the cost. And now she held the evidence that could destroy Robert Wilson's perfect life. But Sarah never got the chance to tell anyone. The night she was silent. Inside the Wilson home, the air felt just as heavy. A tension simmered beneath the surface, unseen but palpable, like the moments before a storm. The evening of September 14th, 2018, hung over Millbrook like an ominous shadow. The streets were quiet, untouched by the usual hum of late-night traffic or the distant murmur of television screens through open windows. A cold breeze whispered through the trees, carrying with it an eerie stillness, the kind that lingers before something terrible happens. Would anyone? Sarah Thompson sat on her bed, staring at the photographs laid out before her. She had spent days debating what to do, wrestling with fear and doubt, knowing that what she had discovered could destroy lives. Would her mother believe her? By 9:30 p.m., Sarah made her decision. She grabbed her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen before she finally sent a message to her best friend, Emily Chun. "I need to tell you something, but first I have to handle it. If I don't reply tomorrow, call me." She moved silently, slipping out of the house like a shadow. The town was asleep, unaware that this was the last time Sarah Thompson would ever walk those streets. The weight of those words settled on her chest. She hesitated for just a second before tucking her phone into her pocket, slinging her camera bag over her shoulder and stepping into the night. The confrontation. By 10:15 p.m., Sarah stood in the parking lot outside Robert Wilson's office in downtown Hartford. The glow of a flickering street lamp cast long shadows against the pavement. At 10:23 p.m., the office door swung open. She gripped her camera bag tightly, her breath coming in short, nervous gasps. She had never been afraid of Robert before, but something in her gut told her that tonight was different. Robert Wilson stepped outside. His suit jacket hung loosely over one arm, his phone pressed to his ear. He moved with the same controlled confidence that had fooled everyone in Millbrook into believing he was a good man. Sarah took a step forward, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. "We need to talk." Robert's entire body went still. He lowered his phone, his expression shifting from mild surprise to something colder, darker. "Sarah, it's late. Go home." For the first time, Robert's mask cracked. His usual calm, polished demeanor faltered. And in its place, something sinister crept into his expression. But she didn't move. Instead, she reached into her camera bag, pulled out the photographs, and held them up beneath the streetlight. "I know. I saw everything. You have no idea what you're doing," he whispered, his voice trembling, not with fear, but with barely contained rage. By 10:45 p.m., Robert Wilson's car pulled into his driveway, but Sarah was not with him. She was already dead. The woods behind the Wilson residence had been a place where Sarah once wandered freely, capturing the beauty of nature through her camera lens. But now it became her grave. Sarah stood her ground. "You think you can keep lying? I'm going to tell her. I'm going to tell everyone." A tense silence stretched between them. Then, in one swift motion, Robert lunged forward, grabbing Sarah's wrist with a crushing grip. "No, you won't." And in that moment, Sarah realized she had made a terrible mistake. the murder in the woods. The serrated blade he had used cut deep, severing flesh and life in one swift motion. The attack had been quick, ruthless, with no room for second thoughts. Sarah had fought, but it hadn't mattered. Robert dragged her lifeless body through the underbrush, his breath ragged, his hands shaking with adrenaline and fear. Her camera was gone, its memory card ripped out and crushed beneath his heel, erasing the proof that could have destroyed him. But her blood told a different story. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Because no matter how carefully he tried to hide the truth, the woods always remember. She never stood a chance. Her blood soaked into the earth, seeping into the roots of the trees, staining the place where she had once found peace. Robert worked fast. He gathered broken branches and scattered leaves, a pathetic attempt to conceal the horror he had just committed. And so with the town of Millbrook. At 6:42 a.m., the body was found. A local jogger, taking his usual morning route, had veered slightly off the trail. It was the glint of something pale beneath the leaves that made him stop. At first, he thought it was a discarded mannequin, abandoned in the woods. But then he saw the dried blood, the bruised skin, the wide, unseeing eyes staring up at the sky. His shaking hands reached for his phone. By 7:15 a.m., the crime scene was swarming with officers, the once tranquil neighborhood now pulsing with horror. Detective Michael Carter arrived minutes later. The moment he saw Sarah's body, he knew this was personal, a crime of rage, control, and desperation. Something about it felt off, as if the killer had tried too hard to mislead them. As Carter's sharp eyes scanned the ground, picking apart the details that others might miss, he noticed something. Sarah's camera was missing. And in that moment, the detective knew whoever had done this wasn't just a killer. They were someone who had something to hide. The woods behind the Wilson residence, once a sanctuary of tall trees and rustling leaves, now hid a terrible secret. By 7:15 a.m. on September 15, 2018, the peaceful suburb of Millbrook had become unrecognizable. Yellow police tape cut through the dense morning fog, marking the place where innocence had been lost. The usually quiet streets were now flooded with officers, forensic teams, and stunned onlookers whispering behind their hands. The investigation begins. Detective Michael Carter, a 20-year veteran of the Hartford Police Department, stepped out of his car, pulling his coat tighter against the cold. His eyes scanned the forest floor, trained to pick up the smallest inconsistencies, the details others missed. He had worked dozens of homicide cases, but something about this crime scene felt different. Blood had pooled beneath her throat, now dried into dark, rust-colored patches against her pale skin. The wound was jagged and deep, a brutal, merciless attack. Her wrists were bruised, proof of a desperate struggle. Under her fingernails, forensic technicians found traces of dirt and skin. Sarah had fought back. There, partially covered in leaves and broken twigs, lay the lifeless body of Sarah Thompson. But Carter's attention was drawn to something missing. "Where's her camera?" he murmured, turning to the crime scene technician. Sarah was known for never going anywhere without it. The camera was her constant companion, her way of seeing the world. Yet, it was gone. Someone had taken it. The first whispers of suspicion came almost immediately. Amanda Wilson, Sarah's mother. Neighbors spoke of frequent heated arguments that had echoed across their yards. Sarah's friends told detectives that she resented Amanda's devotion to Robert Wilson. Her stepfather, she had felt pushed aside, unwanted. And then there were the text messages. The weeks leading up to Sarah's murder had been filled with tension. Carter sat at his desk, reading through the digital evidence, the words flickering on the screen like ghosts of a broken family. "At least I'm not a jealous little girl," Amanda had replied. Bitter words spoken in anger, but now twisted into possible motive. When detectives questioned Amanda, she gave them a simple answer. "You'll never be happy," Sarah had texted. "I was home. I was watching TV." But no one could confirm that. No phone calls, no texts, no security footage showing her where she claimed to be. A woman grieving or hiding something. The town of Millbrook didn't wait for the answer. The media latched onto the narrative like wolves. Mother's jealousy turns deadly, rage and resentment. A daughter's life stolen. Amanda's face was plastered across every news station. Her name whispered in hushed tones at grocery stores, coffee shops, and Sunday church services. "I didn't kill my daughter," she whispered. She stopped leaving the house. She stopped answering the phone. She stopped fighting back. On September 17, 2018, Amanda Wilson was brought in for questioning. She sat across from Detective Carter, her hands shaking, her voice thin and broken. A perfect alibi. Too perfect. Something didn't fit. Doubt in the air. If Amanda had done this, Carter expected her to be controlled, careful, defensive. Instead, she looked lost. She was inconsistent. Yes, emotional, fragile, struggling to hold herself together. But she was not calculated. Yet, the evidence was stacking against her. The texts, the strained mother-daughter relationship, the lack of an alibi. Carter turned to the one thing that could break this case open: Sarah's missing camera. If they could find it, they could find the truth. And that truth would lead him to someone far more dangerous than a grieving mother. Carter watched her carefully. He had interrogated liars before, studied the way guilt seeped through their words. But Amanda was not cold. She was not distant. She was falling apart before his eyes. Amanda's hands trembled as she held a tissue, pressing it against her red-rimmed eyes. Her voice was fragile, every word fighting its way through her grief and exhaustion. Detective Michael Carter had spent years hunting killers. He had sat across from monsters in human skin, men and women who could lie with a straight face, who could fake remorse, and who could hide behind tears that meant nothing. But as he sat in the cold, dimly lit interrogation room on September 17, 2018, staring at Amanda Wilson, he didn't see a murderer. He saw a mother on the verge of collapse. Carter leaned back in his chair, watching her closely. "I didn't kill my daughter," she whispered, barely able to hold herself together. "I know we argued, but I would never hurt Sarah." Amanda was inconsistent, emotional, defensive, but not cold-blooded. Not the way killers usually were. There was no detachment, no rehearsed story, just raw, unfiltered pain. And yet, the evidence stacked against her. The heated text messages between her and Sarah painted a picture of a strained relationship. Neighbors spoke of loud, bitter arguments. Amanda had no solid alibi, no one to confirm where she was the night of the murder. Then, something shifted. A new witness, Elena Gonzalez. She sat across from another detective, her fingers nervously twisting a silver bracelet as she spoke. Carter's brow furrowed. Amanda had insisted she had been inside all night. But now, a witness placed her outside, standing near the very woods where Sarah's body was later discovered. "I saw Amanda that night," she admitted, voice uneasy. "Around midnight, she was outside, just standing there, in her driveway, staring at the woods." It was the first real contradiction in Amanda's story. And in a case like this, one contradiction was enough. By September 18, 2018, the decision was made. Amanda Wilson was arrested for the murder of her daughter. The moment her hands were cuffed, everything changed. The town of Millbrook turned against her overnight. Sarah Thompson was no longer a bright, promising student whose life had been cut short. She became the tragic victim of a jealous, rage-filled mother. News outlets ran with the story, flashing Amanda's tear-streaked mugshot across every screen. Cold-blooded mother kills daughter in a fit of rage. The dark jealousy that ended a young life. Reporters parked outside her home, digging into her past, desperate to spin a deeper scandal. And Amanda? She stopped fighting. Detective Michael Carter should have felt relief. The case against Amanda Wilson was closed. The town of Millbrook had its answer, and the headlines had their tragic villain. She collapsed into silence, offering no defense, no pleas for innocence. Her sobs echoed through the halls of the police station as she was led away in chains, surrounded by officers who had already decided her guilt. Carter watched it happen, his stomach twisting with unease. Something felt wrong. Amanda's pain was real. Her arrest should have brought relief, but instead it left him with a deep, nagging doubt. Outside, standing by his office window, Robert Wilson watched it unfold. For weeks he had played the role of the grieving stepfather, offering teary interviews, holding his wife's hand in public, pretending to mourn the daughter he had murdered. But now, with Amanda in handcuffs, with the world pointing its finger at the wrong person, Robert allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. He had won. For the detective's doubt, it was too easy. But something didn't sit right. The evidence against Amanda was circumstantial at best. No DNA linked her to the crime scene. No murder weapon had been found. There was no blood on her clothes. No eyewitness, no confession. Yet, the world had already decided her guilt. And then there was Robert Wilson. Carter had watched him closely at the crime scene, the funeral, the interrogation room. He had seen grief before, but Robert's was different. It wasn't pain, it was performance. His composure never cracked, his words too rehearsed, his movements too calculated. Something was off. He dug deeper. He combed through Robert's statements, checking for inconsistencies. He reviewed security footage from Wilson's office building, searching for anything that could confirm the alibi that had saved him from suspicion. And that's when he saw, at 10:23 p.m. on the night of the murder, Robert Wilson's car pulled out of the parking lot. He had claimed he was working late, safe inside his office. but he wasn't there. He was lying. And suddenly, Carter knew Amanda Wilson wasn't the killer. The real murderer had been hiding in plain sight all along. On September 2018, Carter made a decision: the affair, and the girl who knew too much. Detective Michael Carter knew Robert Wilson was hiding something bigger than an alibi. The man was too calm, too controlled, as if he believed he had already beaten the system. But Carter had spent too many years hunting men like him. He knew where to look. He started with the basics: bank records, phone logs, security footage. The pieces didn't fit. Robert claimed he had been working late the night of Sarah's murder, but Carter found inconsistencies in his timeline. Then came the first crack in Wilson's perfect story: a cafe, a small, unremarkable spot on the outskirts of Hartford, one that Robert had visited regularly, and he wasn't alone. Security footage from the cafe revealed the truth. For over a year, Robert and Elena had been meeting in secret, slipping away from their spouses to indulge in stolen moments. It was a carefully concealed betrayal, one that no one was supposed to know about. But Sarah knew. That's when Carter found something else. Sarah's diary. It had been hidden away by her best friend, Emily Chun, who had been too scared to come forward at first. When Carter read the final entries, his stomach turned. "I saw them. I saw everything. He doesn't know I have proof, but he will soon." Robert Wilson was having an affair with Elena Gonzalez, the wife of his closest friend and neighbor, David Gonzalez. Sarah had photographic evidence of the affair. She had planned to expose Robert Wilson, and for that, he killed her. The killer behind the mask. Detective Michael Carter felt the weight of the truth settle over him like a storm cloud. The murder of Sarah Thompson had never been about rage, jealousy, or a fractured mother-daughter relationship. It had been a cover-up. Robert Wilson, the polished, respected financial advisor, had orchestrated the entire crime to protect his perfect life, his reputation, and his illicit affair. And Amanda Wilson, an innocent, grieving mother, had been the scapegoat. He retraced Sarah's steps in her final hours. Carter knew that if he made one wrong move, Robert would slip away. The man was intelligent, manipulative, and had already framed his own wife for a crime he had committed. This had to be airtight. By 10:30 p.m., they were gone. The next time she was seen, she was dead. Security footage confirmed that Sarah had confronted Robert outside his office at 10:23 p.m. on September 14, 2018. The confrontation lasted just under 2 minutes before Robert grabbed Sarah's wrist and pulled her toward his car. The missing camera, the final clue. Sarah's camera was missing, and with it, the one thing that could prove beyond doubt what she had seen. The memory card, the final silent witness to her murder, had vanished. Detective Michael Carter had the motive. He had the opportunity. He knew Robert Wilson had killed Sarah Thompson, but without physical evidence, it wasn't enough. On September 24, 2018, the forensic team shifted their focus to Robert's office, a place that had remained untouched by suspicion. It was his kingdom, the last place he felt completely in control. For days, Carter pored over case files, forensic reports, and search records. The crime scene had been meticulously combed, yet there was no sign of the camera. Something told him Robert hadn't destroyed it completely. Men like him didn't erase evidence, they hid it. A locked drawer in his desk caught Carter's attention. It took seconds to force it open. Beneath folders, financial statements, and a stack of pristine business cards, a small crushed memory card lay hidden.